Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. My name is Pluto and I am a lawyer based in Australia who has been covering Johnny Depp's cases, both of them, since 2020. The format for today's video is to discuss rebuttal witnesses and also comment on the defense's witnesses as they come up in rebuttal. Now, to start off, Johnny's team has moved to strike Amber Heard's counterclaim, and after an impassioned submission from Ben Chu, unfortunately, the counterclaim has survived the motion. This means that the jury will consider the counterclaim. Having said that, I hope you've watched a video I released last week about how I believe Adam Waldman's testimony destroyed Amber's counterclaim, because that video takes into account the eventuality of the counterclaim surviving. I still don't see how it's going to succeed purely based on actual malice. Now, the judge did state that the reason it survived the motion to strike is because actual malice is for the fact finder, being the jury in this instance, to decide upon. Now, before we get into the rebuttal, interestingly, Rottenborn stated that he doesn't believe in Adam Waldman's claim that a perjury complaint has been filed with the LAPD. Lo and behold, we have the actual complaint. Here it is on screen for any doubters out there. The significance of this being that this is further proof that Adam Waldman acted in good faith and upon reasonable belief. He did not act with actual malice. If you're wondering what the definition is, please check the video linked in the description box below. Now, with rebuttals, as an overall summary, the rebuttal really demonstrated how poorly Amber Heard's witnesses, specifically her expert witnesses, performed. If I had to summarize it, Don Hughes basically gave us a taste of what was to come. We heard from Walter Hamada, who is an executive at Warner Brothers. He basically confirmed that Johnny and Adam, and this entire lawsuit, Adam Waldman's statements in particular, have nothing to do with Warner Brothers' decisions regarding Amber Heard's involvement and future involvement in the Aquaman series. Her role was not impacted at all, and in fact, the significance of her role was determined in the very early stages of writing the script. And this is another blow to Amber's counterclaim, because she alleged that Adam Waldman's 3 statements had a negative impact on her career, including her role as Mira. Next, we had Johnny's actual hand surgeon, who helped reconstruct his finger after that horrific injury sustained in Australia. He rebutted Amber's orthopedic surgeon, who claimed that there was no way that Johnny's injury was sustained as a result of glass, and that it was a crush injury. That surgeon never examined Johnny's hand personally. All he did was review documents and review Johnny's description of what happened. He never even saw photos of the scene in Australia, where you can see all the broken glass and the blood around the bar area. The relevance of Johnny's hand surgeon was to confirm that Johnny's hand wasn't in a full cast. It was in a plaster splint, I believe, which is half a cast. So there were some soft spots on his hand. And he also confirmed that Johnny wouldn't have been able to really use that hand much because it was mostly bandaged up, so his movement was very restricted. This is relevant to the staircase incident, which happened pretty much after Johnny came back from Australia to have the first round of surgery on his finger. There was some attempt to discredit this in cross-exam by pulling up photos of the racks that Johnny threw down the staircase in Penthouse 5. But in redirect, a good job was done of casting doubt on the use of force because the cast wasn't damaged, and the doctor testified that it most likely would have been. Richard Marks came back, the entertainment lawyer and expert, and he honestly annihilated Miss Arnold in the most respectful way possible, of course, because that's a common theme with all of Johnny's witnesses. They're respectful, highly professional, and polite, and they are worth their weight in gold in terms of their knowledge and their credibility. The opposite, especially after Dr. Spiegel's performance, can be said about Amber's witnesses. Mr. Marks wasn't the only expert to rebut Ms. Arnold, by the way. We also got back Michael Spindler, who was the forensic accountant. And much like Mr. Marks, he spoke about how Ms. Arnold's testimony, expert testimony, was based on nothing. As Mr. Marks put it, it was built on a house of cards that had absolutely no basis and no foundation. There was no calculation, no data that was utilized other than comparisons of incomparable leading actors. We also got back Mr. Banya, who rebutted Ron Schnell's expert testimony about the hashtags, and he clarified to the jury that the hashtags in and of themselves are entirely separate from Mr. Waldman's statements. And in fact, in one of the demonstratives, the period of April to June was basically flat in terms of negative spikes. And if anything, there was a downward trend. So there were less negative hashtags and less negative tweets pertaining to Amber Heard during the allegedly defamatory Waldman statements period, as he called it. And if you want numbers, he basically whittled it down to 5 tweets out of over 2 million that contained any keywords relevant to Mr. Waldman's statements. What's the impact of this? It destroys the counterclaim even further. Now we get to Hicksville, one of the many surprise rebuttal witnesses that were added to the list, Mr. Morgan Knight. He came across as incredibly affable, honest, very unassuming, just overall an unbiased third party who just wants to correct the record, set the record straight, and share the truth. He was there on the night of the Hicksville incident. He actually spent a bit of time with Johnny one-on-one because he's a fellow musician. So they had a bit of a talk with another female employee. And according to Mr. Knight, Amber was the one who was acting all crazy and jealous that night. And that is exactly what he tweeted to that umbrella guy, or the umbrella man, as Elaine likes to call him. By the way, hello, shout out. Thank you so much for supporting me. He's always been supporting me from the very start. Now, Mr. Knight didn't even know that umbrella guy, didn't know he has a huge following, a YouTube channel. He just found the tweet after conducting a search when someone told him that Hicksville came up. And he basically contradicted Amber's version. And that's what he said, that she was the one who was acting all crazy and jealous. So he expanded upon that at trial in front of the jury and talked about how she was the aggressive one. She was the one who would come up to Johnny all upset and, she would pull him away from Mr. Knight and the other employee. And he spoke about how Johnny was initially in high spirits, really excited to be there, really excited to explore, and was generally having a good time. But he wasn't spending any time with Amber and her friends. He was, as I said, with the employees instead, and Mr. Knight was the owner at the time, by the way. So at one point, he testified that she came over and basically dragged him back to the campfire, proceeded to yell at him, and Johnny was cowering in defense. He was afraid of her, which struck Mr. Knight as odd. When Johnny saw Mr. Knight next, he was actually very apologetic, but his mood changed and he became a lot more reserved and quiet as the night progressed. Later on in the night, Mr. Knight testified that he heard another argument break out between the couple. He saw them, but then they retreated to their trailer, and then nothing happened for the rest of the night. Now, the most important factor as well, other than completely debunking Amber and her friend's version of Johnny being a jealous person who grabbed a woman by the wrist and committed SA in the same night, Mr. Knight's testimony was also relevant to debunk that the trailer was trashed, which pretty much every one of Amber's witnesses who were involved in that incident testified to. It turns out it was just the light sconce that was broken, and the light fixture was kind of hanging off the wall, and it cost Mr. Knight $62 to replace it, which Johnny reimbursed him for. He also didn't see Johnny being physical with anyone else that night, but he did stress that he only saw them for 45 minutes to an hour in total. So in cross-exam, that left room for them to argue that the incident could have happened when he wasn't looking. I do want to say that Mr. Morgan Knight is an incredibly selfless person who didn't even want to really be involved in this at all. What happened was that an ex-employee from the Hicksville trailer park contacted him, told him that the incident was being mentioned, and when he found out what was being said on Twitter, as I said, he combated it with the truth, at which point Johnny's team reached out, asked him if he would testify, and he agreed. Now, I'm sure you're all waiting for the Dr. Spiegel criticism. I was waiting until we get to Dr. Shaw, who was the rebuttal expert psychiatrist. And he essentially said that Dr. Spiegel's testimony violated the code of ethics of the APA, which is the American Psychiatric Association, specifically the Goldwater Rule, which stipulates that psychiatrists should not diagnose someone, a public figure specifically, without assessing them personally. And if you listen to Dr. Spiegel's testimony, then you would know that he not only diagnosed Johnny with substance abuse disorder, which, by the way, Johnny never denied that he had issues with substances, but he diagnosed him with narcissistic personality disorder with a degree of medical certainty without once meeting Johnny face to face and interviewing him or assessing him. In fact, in his deposition, he stated that he used Johnny's role in Pirates as a baseline to compare against when it comes to his cognitive abilities.
Any of Mr. Depp's other portrayals in movies, did that affect your analysis of processing speed?
Only I've seen him interact on interviews, and that was it.
Right.
When he wasn't in movies.
Right. But Willy Wonka doesn't matter to you? You see him in that movie, Charlie and Chocolate Factory? Did you look at that one when you were comparing his processing speed?
Do I have to answer that question, Your Honor?
You have to answer questions. Yes, sir.
I could go on about Dr. Spiegel. I mean, they showed him photos of Johnny asleep with ice cream on him, Johnny sitting upright, falling asleep, and he would literally look at these photos and come up with some insane diagnosis purely based on these photos that Johnny is a narcissistic abuser. You couldn't make this stuff up. And I'm actually glad the jury got to see that. I'm glad that the photos were put up and he came up with these ludicrous on-the-spot diagnoses. Because if anything, it would just discredit him in the eyes of the jury. And now Jennifer Howell. Now I will link a video in the comment section. I've done it in a prior video as well, to a video I made 2 years ago covering Jennifer Howell's declaration. Her role was to rebut Whitney's account of the staircase incident. Now, unfortunately, this didn't come up at all in her deposition. It was clearly significantly edited. I don't want to speculate as to why. I've heard that it's because in Whitney's cross-examination, counsel failed to lay a foundation to introduce Jennifer's testimony. Having said that, the jury will have access to her statement and to an email that she sent Whitney. But if you are interested in finding out what she had to say, as I said, you can click on my video from 2 years ago. We also heard evidence from the Children's Hospital of LA that to date, Amber did not donate more than $250,000. So again, this goes directly against the public statements that she has made and the statements that she has made under oath in the UK that she in fact did donate that amount. All right, we get to Kate Moss. This was the shortest testimony in trial to date, but also one of the most profound. I mean, even visually, seeing her come up on screen like that, put her hand up, swear to tell the truth. It was a powerful moment. This was someone who had a romance with Johnny before my time even. And she has come forward to vouch for him and testify on his behalf. She destroyed Amber's claim that Johnny pushed Kate Moss down the stairs. It turned out to be the exact opposite. Kate slipped in a rainstorm and Johnny picked her up, took her back to the room, and immediately sought medical attention for her. She also clarified that Johnny was never violent towards her in any capacity. Now we'll find out more about the origins of this rumor when we get to Johnny's direct examination. I'm not going to get into Dr. Curry's testimony in a lot of detail because it was highly technical and I'm sure all of you have watched it at this point, but she was brought in to rebut Dawn Hughes' testimony. She completely attacked her methods, completely discredited her, and explained to the jury why a lot of things that Dawn Hughes did were absolutely not only wrong, but again, violated the code of ethics of psychologists. A prime example being constantly bringing up her own opinions and the self-reports of Amber Heard and disguising them or phrasing them as fact. She also violated the code of ethics by disclosing highly personal and sensitive information about the litigants in this case, specifically with the SA. All right, we get to Johnny's direct and cross-exam. So in summary, he denied knowing anything about Adam Waldman's statements until the counterclaim was filed 2 years ago in August. There was a lot of clarification surrounding Australia, looking at photos, pointing things out, explaining what happened on the Orient Express for their honeymoon, and explaining where the Kate Moss rumor came from. It turns out at some point during the relationship, Johnny told Amber about Kate slipping down the stairs. She then took that story and twisted it into something so ugly and so horrific and started to refer to it as some kind of a rumor that otherwise never existed, by the way. The rumor, I mean. It never existed in the world until she put it out there as part of litigation. Direct exam was concluded by telling the jury how horrified he was at listening to Amber's testimony as he sat there right before her. This is what he had to say.
What has it been like for you to listen to Miss Heard's testimony at this trial?
Insane. Horrible. Ridiculous, humiliating, ludicrous, painful, savage, unimaginably brutal, cruel, and all false. All false.
Cross-examination was a joke, if you ask me. It really highlights how Amber has absolutely nothing. With the Australia incident, for example, Rottenborn's only concern was whether a wall phone existed and whether it was smashed or not. Nothing about Amber's alleged assault and SA ever came up. No photos of her injuries, no evidence whatsoever proving any of the horrific allegations that she made when she was testifying. It all came down to a vodka handle and a phone. Now, the good thing about this is that I'm hoping the jury are picking up on this. I'm hoping that they're noticing that fixating on a phone when your client was allegedly SA'd horrifically with a bottle just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. They tried to introduce Stephen's text message to Amber after the Boston flight. This isn't the first time that they tried, but it wasn't introduced. But regardless, Johnny did say that, yeah, I would tell Stephen, placate her, do whatever it takes, because if you do anything short of that, it is World War III. Anyone who's had any personal experience with an abuser or a very difficult personality that you have to walk on eggshells around all the time and they have to be right, you would know exactly what Johnny means. And of course, the Sun article was pulled up again because any chance they can get to read out the title and say wife beater, they jump on that opportunity. Except this is my take on that. The way I see it, it works out for Johnny because it only proves to the jury that he doesn't have a personal vendetta against Amber. He will go after anyone and sue anyone for defamation who dares call him a wife beater. He went after the Sun and their journalist, Dan Wooten, at the time. Amber was just a witness. So it only validates Johnny's belief that he's being wronged in my eyes, because the way they're painting it now is, why isn't he suing the Washington Post? Why isn't he going after the ACLU? It's because he has a bone to pick with Miss Heard. The UK trial immediately flies in the face of that argument. Another thing that came up in cross-exam and redirect are text messages he sent to Christian Carino, where he was visibly angry. And he owned up to that. In redirect, he said, yes, this woman destroyed my life in an instant. My entire existence on planet Earth as I knew it was changed for the worse. What human wouldn't be angry? Especially when such accusations are baseless, false, and entirely lacking in evidence. Speaking of evidence, we move on to Mr. Morgan Tremaine, who was a former employee at TMZ. Specifically, he was the field assignment manager, so he would dispatch paparazzi whenever they would be tipped off that a certain celebrity would be somewhere. In summary, he confirmed that on multiple instances, the 27th of May 2016 when she went to court, the 6th of August, 12th of August, and 13th of August 2016, TMZ received a tip from an authorized source, so from a news producer, which means it's already been verified and authorized as an authentic tip, that Amber would be, firstly, at the courthouse, So let's tackle that one first. There was an agreement that day between whoever tipped TMZ and TMZ that Amber would come out of that courthouse and present the right side of her face to the cameras so that the alleged bruise could be on full display. And Morgan Tremaine is the one who referred to this bruise as the alleged bruise. So she was parading her bruise to the cameras, and this immediately flies in the face of her account that she wanted this hidden on the down low. She was hoping and praying no one would know about it, and that she was shocked, stunned when she came out and saw the sea of photographers waiting for her outside the courthouse. She also wanted TMZ present when she gave a deposition on the 6th of August 2016 and the 13th. Now, what happened on the 12th? TMZ received what we now know as the kitchen cabinet video, except Morgan confirmed it was a different version. It was the version that we all saw years ago, where we couldn't see the beginning and the end. We couldn't see Amber setting up the camera and then smirking, laughing almost, before ending the recording. When he found this out, he reached out to assist Johnny's lawyers, not to testify, but just to set the timeline straight and to help them make sense of things. But for the sake of the truth, he agreed to testify, and he even said that he's putting himself basically in the line of fire by doing this. And this was in response to Elaine's favorite question.
You know this case is being televised, right?
I am aware that there are cameras.
And so this gets you your 15 minutes of fame, doesn't
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
it? I can ask that question.
Overruled.
So I stand to gain nothing from this. I'm actually putting myself kind of in a target of TMZ, a very litigious organization, and I'm not seeking any 15 minutes here. Though you're welcome to speculate. I could say the same thing by taking Amber Heard as a client for you.
A little argumentative, don't you think?
Oh, hardly. I find that to be purely logical.
Now, back to that video. Morgan talked about how the copyright process, because TMZ owns the video now, can be very lengthy if they don't have direct authorization from the copyright owner. Now, he could not verify who sent the video, but a mere 15 minutes elapsed from the time the video was received to its publication. And it was received through an email where they get anonymous tips. Now, this is important because it shows the jury that whoever sent it to TMZ was most likely the original owner. Even though we don't know for a fact, you can make inferences. This is known as circumstantial evidence. We don't directly know that Amber Heard or someone from her camp sent it, but we can connect the dots. He also confirmed that TMZ did not edit the video. So they received it already edited. And this proves that whoever sent it, let's pretend we don't know who sent it, knew exactly what they were doing. We also had a digital forensics expert by the name of Brian Neumeister. So his job was to demonstrate to the jury that photos of Amber's injuries, including the one from 2013 with the arm bruise, could not be authenticated. No expert, according to him, could authenticate these photos because, firstly, they weren't the original photos. They were backups of backups from iTunes, where all of the file scripts and other relevant data is not available. In some instances, he even referred to the photos being screenshots from a computer rather than the original file. Basically, he showed the jury that all of the photos admitted into evidence were edited in editing software. There were many different versions of each photo with varying sizes. He prepared demonstratives where he would show before and afters of photos, clearly demonstrating that one, for example, was not saturated. She looked like she just had makeup on. This was from the 21st of May, 2016. And then an identical photo showed her looking a lot redder in the face. And you can see that the coloring and the vibrance of the photo was manipulated. And we closed off the day with Beverly Leonard, the police officer who witnessed the altercation between Amber and Tasha back in the airport in 2009, and the one who was involved in arresting her. She talked about how it happened. She talked about how she had to intervene because it got that bad, how she separated them, stood in between them, how Tasha had an abrasion on her neck from where Amber pulled the necklace around her neck. She described how Tasha was defending herself with her arms up, and how aggressive Amber was and how intoxicated she seemed. She could also smell alcohol on her breath. And I would also like to say that Dr. Spiegel's description of IPV perpetrators completely fit Amber to a T, which was deja vu to me because that's how I felt when Don Hughes was testifying as well. Interestingly, Dr. Spiegel talked about how IPV perpetrators usually downplay their IPV. I made a comment about this on social media where you can hear in the leaked audio tapes that she calls Johnny a baby and that she didn't punch him, she just hit him. That's the first thing that came to mind when I heard Dr. Spiegel say that IPV perpetrators downplay IPV. Amber downplayed it this time as well and said, oh, it's nothing, we're just having an argument, it's okay. But Tasha insisted that she get arrested, and she did. And for the record, she spent the night in jail and appeared in court the next day. And that's it for this video. This was a great week for Johnny. I was apprehensive when Amber's witnesses, especially the personal witnesses, provided testimony and got emotional. Even though they weren't in person, I was worried that would impact the jury and make them believe that they were traumatized over what they had witnessed. But I think in rebuttal, an excellent job was done of at least diminishing from the expert testimony for the defense. If there was ever a dent caused in Johnny's case, I would whittle it down to her personal friends who got emotional. Keep a lookout for the next video, by the way. I'll be releasing it very shortly after this one, where we're gonna discuss what to expect next. Thanks again, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.